Hey everybody, welcome back to the Cozy Conversation podcast. My name is Sarah,
My name is Terryn.
and we are so excited to welcome you to episode 3 of our Cozy
Yeah,
Fall series.
we're
Yeah.
already on episode 3. I can't believe it.
I love how we just kind of had like whoa, what episode are we
I
on?
know.
Last week was super fun because we had Alyssa Zavalianos on the podcast. We got
Yes.
to talk to her, talk about her cozy fantasy. So we hoped you tuned into that one. And if not, you can always just go and listen to it now.
It was so good.
And thanks again to Alyssa for taking time out of her busy schedule. Also, pick up her new book, Unearth the Tides, that comes out on October 6th.
Yes.
Congrats to her. We're very excited for that.
Yes.
But, Terryn, what's going on in your neck of the woods? How's life?
It is going. I am super excited because Cozy Cottage Living is launching the fall collection
Woo!
on this Saturday. So
Which is tomorrow?
yes, exactly. From when everyone will be listening to this. So
Yep.
yeah, that is something I'm super excited for. I have so many cute things, a lot more variety than I have had throughout the summer. So I'm super excited for it. And hopefully it's stuff that people will want. So many cute fall things. Like I cannot, every time it just makes me happy looking at them. So that has been moving along. Also, my Graceway graphics has been
Yes.
gaining hopefully a little bit of traction. So if anyone knows of a small church or ministry that, or any size, that needs help with their social media or graphics, let me know because I would love to help them out. So yeah.
And we will link that again in the description below. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, that's
It's a
great.
great ministry.
What about you, Sarah? You have some pretty exciting news from this week.
Monday night, September, what was September? It was the 18th? The 19th? No, yeah, the 18th.
18th.
Wow. I finished this draft of my book. It was around 11 p.m. and I finished it. So
I am so unbelievably proud.
thanks, Terryn.
She was texting me the whole time, that whole evening, that she was like trying to get it finished up. And I was just like, oh my gosh, the time has arrived. We've been waiting.
We have been waiting because I told myself I was going to finish in June.
Oh, right.
It's September.
But
the book is due to my editor in 4 days.
You've killed it.
Obviously, we know that I need a deadline. A hard deadline. I can't be giving myself little deadlines here and there. That doesn't do anything for me.
You've done so great, and I cannot wait to read your book.
I'm excited, but also nervous because that means you're reading my book. But besides that, I also wanted to give a couple shout outs to some of my friends who have been moving and working in their own little corners of the internet too.
Ooh,
first, we've got my friend Mona Moore, who has her website, Tidbits and Musings. I'll link it down below, but she has been releasing short stories and like episodes. So she'll release like a short like episode and then like the next continuation, like part of the story. And it's been super fun. I'm also her editor for that, so that's been such a fun thing to walk alongside of her with. And she'll also be coming out with some fun stuff this fall, so just stay tuned for that. Also want to give a shout out to my friend Kelsey Priestley with her podcast Abundant Joy.
yes.
So if you like uplifting podcasts like this one, give Abundant Joy a listen on Spotify. And I think that concludes the commercial portion of the episode.
I love it. So many exciting things.
So many fun things going on. Love getting to walk alongside everybody with what they're doing and cheer them on. And yeah.
So many exciting things. So many things to be grateful for.
Yes. Oh, okay, Terryn. Segue into our grateful section part of the podcast.
Yes.
Gratitude. Yeah, that's a big conversation, especially during this time of year. You know, like months get colder, so people, I feel like I don't know if you have noticed this correlation, but like as the weather gets colder, people kind of start becoming more grateful. Is that like a theme you've noticed?
Yeah, maybe because like as we hit winter, people have to be more intentional, with like the seasonal depression and stuff. I don't
And
know.
this is
That might be,
true.
you know what I mean? Like a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of people get like down during when it gets colder and stuff. So maybe
Yeah.
they have to be like more intentional. I don't know, but you're right. I feel like especially once we hit fall, the whole gratitude like theme just
I,
like
I think just with
explodes.
Thanksgiving too.
Yeah, I think Thanksgiving's a big part of it.
Yeah. I don't know what your family does um during Thanksgiving, but do you guys like go around the table and like list what you're thankful for?
I know a lot of people do that. We just say a blessing.
Oh, okay. That's cute. I think you're the first person I've met that doesn't
Do the yeah,
the
we're
little
a little unconventional. We don't do the
it's okay.
whole my grandpas
Yeah.
would never stand for that. They'd be like, "Shut up so we can eat." That doesn't really fly for us. But we do. My dad always, or whoever says the blessing always does like a longer Thanksgiving blessing. So we're not
Got
complete
it.
heathens, but
That's cute. Well, we go around and say how thankful we are for each other while the food is getting cold, but no, I'm kidding. That's cool. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think one thing with like gratitude and how we've kind of talked about before on the podcast, is just like, you know, that, I guess one question too is like, when was a time where choosing gratitude, like no matter how difficult that choice was, changed your perspective on a situation? I don't know if you ever experienced that. I feel like that's still a hard conversation to have just in general. I think with because another thing too is like some people expect it to be like overnight, like, oh, I'm gonna be grateful, and then suddenly my perspective will change. But I
Yeah.
also don't think that's fully the case because I feel like gratitude is something you have to fight for.
Yeah, like in my life the last couple years, it's been, difficult, and
Yeah.
I wake up every single day and I
Mhm.
decide to be thankful. And honestly, for me, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change how I feel. It doesn't make
Yeah.
anything better for me, but it's a choice still. And it's a
Right.
choice that the Lord requires of me. And it's a choice that I want to make because
Yeah.
He's blessed me with so much. So, every
Mhm.
single day I go through, there's always something to be thankful for. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like that's the thing too, is like we live in a culture that's often just not like we complain a lot. Like
We do.
we
Yep. I
complain a lot.
think that whole like instant gratification thing is
Yeah.
what makes us complain more.
And so for me, it's just been like, you know, there's always something to be thankful for. And so I personally have so much to be thankful for. So like for me, it's like um I'm sorry, I'm going back to the question.
Yeah,
But
you're
like
good.
I would say, the last 2 years, like I guess it has shifted my perspective in that, I've realized that it doesn't always change your perspective, but
Right.
in that it has changed my perspective to realize like being thankful and grateful is a sacrifice required of me by the Lord, and it's
I
something I need to do every single day.
Yeah. And I think too that like the whole conversation of like, oh, it'll change your perspective gets confused with, oh, it'll change your situation, which it won't change your situation because you're still going to be walking through what you were walking through before. Because I've noticed this too, where it's like, oh, I'm going to be grateful. And then it's like, well, I still have to fight these battles, every day when I, wake up in the morning. But it'll change like just even the fact alone that you're thinking or that we're thinking like, oh, this is a choice I have to make because I'm doing this in worship for the Lord, to the Lord.
Mhm.
That's already like a perspective change right there.
Yeah.
I think even though no matter how hard that choice is to be grateful.
Yeah, exactly. And even if it doesn't make you feel any better, it's not always about
Right.
how you feel. It's about
Yeah.
you serving the Lord through being thankful and through,
Yeah.
giving thanks for what He's given you.
Totally. Yeah. I think too, like, I feel like we're also a culture that lives too much off of feelings and um like how you feel like, oh, worship was so good. I felt so good during worship. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's
Just
not
kind of,
about that.
it's not, yeah. Um, so I don't know. I think that that's part of it too. Just in the sense that it's still gonna feel hard, still gonna feel tough. Obviously we can validate that because it is hard, it is difficult, it is tough. So I think that like with focusing on gratitude, it kind of reminds yourself to look to the Lord,
Yes.
no matter what you're walking through and no matter what you're feeling
Yes.
in that moment too, which is
Exactly.
easier said than done.
Uh-huh. Right.
But I
So
think
good.
that that's something too that we just want you as our listeners to just lean into, and especially during this time of year. Also just like read your Bible, get into the Word, study it, and that's also something that's going to help with whatever you're walking through. This takes us into Terryn's fall fun fact.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. So the fall fun fact of today, we're going to learn about the history of pumpkin pie.
Ooh.
So obviously the history of pumpkin pie starts with the history of pumpkins. Pumpkins were first cultivated in Central America in 5,500 BC. The pumpkin is technically a fruit, and there is no such thing as a wild pumpkin, as pumpkins were cultivated from wild gourds that grew in the moist soils of riverbanks and creeks. I didn't know that. So they don't just like grow by themselves in the wild. The word pumpkin originates from pompon, which means large melon in Greek. I'm
Nice.
sure I didn't pronounce that correctly,
That's
but
okay.
Greek is not a big language for me. And I'm good at it.
You don't speak Greek fluently?
No, I don't. Shock of all shocks. But it then evolved into pompon in French and pompion in Britain. The Americans later changed it to pumpkin, which is
How did we go from pompion to pumpkin?
I know. I like pompion better.
Yeah.
By the year 2500 BC, Native Americans in Southwest North America grew pumpkins, and by around 1200 BC, so did those living in the East. They roasted pumpkins on hot cinders, boiled them to make sauce, and dried them to make jerky-like strips or flour. By the time colonial settlers from England arrived in the late 15th century, Native Americans all over the continent were growing pumpkins. Pumpkins were one of the earliest foods brought back by Europeans from the New World. In keeping with European cooking traditions, colonial settlers boiled pumpkins to make a thick porridge or pudding, which was very similar in texture to apple butter. The first pumpkin pies were whole pumpkins with their tops cut off and the seeds scooped out. The pumpkin was then filled with a savory porridge of stewed pumpkin, breadcrumbs, apples, and eggs. The top was placed back on the pumpkin, and the whole thing was baked in the oven.
Interesting.
Yeah, a sweet pumpkin pie of this era would have been something that was considered a sweet pumpkin pie. It would have been a pumpkin stuffed with only apples and baked whole. So those are the first pumpkin pies. Definitely different than what we see on our table today.
Yeah.
A 1653 French cookbook instructed chefs to boil the pumpkin in milk and strain it before putting it in a crust. That just doesn't sound good to me.
No.
English writer Hannah Woolley's 1670 Gentlewoman's Companion advocated a pie filled with alternating layers of pumpkin and apple, spiced rosemary, sweet marjoram, and a handful of thyme. The first pumpkin pie recipe similar to ours today appeared in Amelia Simmons' 1796 American Cookery Cookbook. By the 18th century, pumpkin pie became a staple in the celebration of Thanksgiving, although, contrary to what we would think, there's actually no mention of pumpkin pie at the first Thanksgiving.
Blasphemy. I'm kidding.
In 1705, a town in Connecticut even postponed its celebration of Thanksgiving because there was not enough molasses to make pies.
Oh, wow.
That's just crazy to me, how much they love their pumpkin pies.
Yeah.
In the mid-19th century, pumpkin pie turned political.
Oh.
I was not expecting this twist. Since it was highly popular in New England, it became used in many abolitionist writings. And when Abraham Lincoln made Thanksgiving a national holiday in 1863, that caused more political division, and pumpkin pie was recognized as a symbol of Northern tradition.
Stop. That's so interesting.
I know. I was just Wow, never even thought that. But after the Civil War, pumpkin pie extended its reach nationally and gained popularity, helped by many write-ups in women's magazines. Surprise, surprise. In 1929, Libby's Meat Canning Company of Chicago introduced a line of canned pumpkin that soon became a Thanksgiving fixture in its own right, replacing the need for roasting and straining one's own pumpkin. According to the Guinness Book of World Records, Benny Meyer of Germany presented the heaviest pumpkin to date on October 12, 2014. The massive pumpkin weighed in at 2,323.7 pounds. Shockingly, this was the third record-breaking pumpkin grown by Meyer during this season.
Interesting.
So that is our history of pumpkin pie and what got us to the lovely dessert that sits on our tables at Thanksgiving.
Fascinating.
I know. My references were Wheatsfield Co-op and then The History of Pumpkin Pie by Nate Barksdale and the Guinness Book of World Records.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
cool. Thanks, Terryn.
Uh-huh.
You know those like movies where they have like the pumpkin, like who can build or not build, who can grow the biggest pumpkin?
Yes.
My thought is like, how do they do that? Like, how do you make a pumpkin grow bigger?
I know. Maybe it's like something in the soil, like in what you like fertilize it with or something.
Maybe, or like how you water it, or like when you start. You know?
I know. I don't know, but
That's
seems
interesting.
like science. Yeah.
I'm definitely more of an apple pie person.
Yeah.
But
honestly, I'm not a huge pie person in general, but I will eat it.
oh
But
my goodness, my coworker brought an apple pie and
Ooh,
a peach pie to
yum.
work the other day. I was like, he put them out at like 8:30 in the morning. And my boss and I walked over and we were like, we are getting pie. It's 8:45. We don't care.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that's
Delicious.
cool.
Is it time for Sarah's mystery corner?
I think it's time for Sarah's mystery corner.
I've been waiting all day for this.
I literally have been texting Terryn all day how excited I am for both her fall fun fact and mystery corner.
Yes.
And I had no idea what I was going to write about. Well, I'll tell you. And welcome to Sarah's mystery corner. So I'll be honest, I had no idea what I was going to talk about today. But as I was waking up this morning, my mind drifted to this one particular unsolved mystery, one that I knew I wanted to research further. Before jumping in, my sources come from Britannica, the FBI website.
Whoa.
The FBI online records, which they have like
Sarah.
they have like a whole vault where you can go in and see like all these old records. Yeah.
Mind blown.
And
you know what
finally,
I'm going to be doing tomorrow?
and finally, the National Park Service. So I want you to picture this. The San Francisco city skyline and the Marin Highlands, known for its cliffs, rolling hills, and across the bay views of San Francisco, surrounding an inlet of water called the San Francisco Bay, with the Golden Gate Bridge acting as a barrier to the Pacific Ocean. Right in the center of that bay is a small oval-shaped island known as Alcatraz Island, with the cold, freezing waters of the Pacific Ocean crashing upon its shores. When I was younger, probably around 3 years old, my family and I toured Alcatraz, which I think you can still do to this day. I might be wrong though. But every year when we would visit San Francisco and take our walk after lunch on Pier 39, I would always love looking across the bay at Alcatraz, wondering at the mysteriousness of it and at those that were imprisoned within its walls. So Alcatraz was originally sold to the United States government in 1849, and it actually hosted the first lighthouse on California's coast in 1854.
Oh, cool.
So once in the hands of the US government, Alcatraz was used as a military prison. Alcatraz seemed to always house prisoners, first holding captives during the Civil War days, but later on in the 1930s, during the midst of the Great Depression, Alcatraz was refortified into what was considered the world's most secure prison. Names like Al Capone, George Machine Gun Kelly, and the infamous Birdman of Alcatraz were all prisoners on Alcatraz Island, and they were all also known as gangsters and mobsters in the 1920s and beyond. But what's most interesting about Alcatraz is the attempted escapes.
Ooh.
There had been times, 14 times actually, where men tried to escape the walls of Alcatraz. Not just the walls, but like the island itself. Each of those attempts, the men were caught or their bodies were eventually found.
Ooh.
Except for the time when three men, John Anglin, Clarence Anglin, and Frank Morris, escaped Alcatraz.
Ooh.
Each of the three men were brought to Alcatraz in the early 1960s for crimes along the lines of bank robberies, burglaries, and even attempts to escape other prisons. And okay, so for some odd reason, despite those rap sheets, the warden or whoever was in charge of assigning cells gave them an adjoining cell. So like
Oh,
they were like all together. So
yeah.
that was the perfect way to meet and plan their escape. June 12th, 1962 was the day they were discovered missing. The warden was checking cells early that morning and found that those three men were not in their beds. Apparently, and there's pictures to prove it on the FBI website, the men had crafted plaster heads to place on their pillows, complete with hair, eyebrows, and eyelashes, which
Whoa.
effectively fooled the night shift guards the night before. So June 11th is technically when they escaped.
Right.
The prison, once they noticed the prisoners were gone, immediately went into lockdown and the search began. The FBI was called in to help with the search, and eventually they found a homemade paddle and a homemade life vest near or on Angel Island, which is another island just south of the city of Tiburon, east from the city of Sausalito, and north of where Alcatraz sat. So it's a much bigger island if you look on a map. But essentially, the prisoners, they escaped their cells after the three men had sawed off the gates to their vents that were located in their cells, crawled through, and landed in an unguarded utility room. They then climbed to the roof of the building, shimmied down a smokestack, climbed over a fence, and set sail across the bay in their makeshift raft, which was made from over 50 raincoats.
Whoa.
And that's all we know.
So
The
they really got
FBI,
away.
the FBI continued their search, realizing that there could only be a few theories of what happened to these three men. First, they could have made the mile-long swim across the San Francisco Bay up north to Angel Island. And based on the earlier mentioned evidence found, the handmade life vest and the paddle, this could have been a possibility. Further interesting pieces of evidence started to be discovered, which pointed to this theory as well. That same year, a fisherman off the coast of San Francisco reeled in a piece of cloth that was similar to what the prisoners on Alcatraz wore because it resembled the blue and white striped pattern of their prison uniforms.
Whoa.
Could this have belonged to one of our three escapees? This could be the case. However, the warden in that day said that it was common for inmates to flush pieces of their clothing down the toilets, and these pieces would later be found on the shores of the island or even across the bay. Second, an informant told the FBI the men's plan was to eventually get to land and steal a car. However, no reports of such theft ever occurred following the day of the escape.
Whoa.
Of course, the men could have had help, but the investigation into their family and friends led the FBI nowhere. The informant that actually provided the FBI with this information, his name was Alan West, who was actually a fourth member of the escapees team. But get this, remember how the inmates had sawed the vents in their cells to be able to escape? Well, West could not get his vent sawed in time, so the three other men left without him.
What a
So
fail.
I know, so he paid them back by telling the FBI everything. So for 17 years, the FBI worked the case. But at the end of 1979, the case was transferred over to the U.S. Marshals Service, where it stays even still to this day. So, whatever happened to John Anglin, Clarence Anglin, and Frank Morris, the Alcatraz escapees? Did they drown in the freezing cold waters of the bay? If so, this begs the question, why weren't their bodies discovered like the men during the other escape attempts?
Yeah.
Could their bodies have been swept out into the Pacific, never to be seen again? Or did the escapees make it to land, blend in with society, and continue their lives as regular citizens, perhaps even living among us now?
Yeah, because they would still be alive.
They very well could be.
Probably.
But I really don't think so, to be honest. I was like making it all dramatic at the end there, and then I was like, I don't believe any of it. They died. The other like theory that people talk about is maybe a shark like ate them.
Yeah, I mean, they were floating around in the ocean.
Who knows?
Wow. 100% on the mystery corner today, Sarah.
You can check out like the FBI website. It'll show
Yeah.
pictures of the paddle that they made, the life vest that they made, those plaster heads that looked very realistic. Also, as like a guard or like a warden of a jail, of a prison that's supposed to be the world's most secure prison, how do you not notice these three men like
Making plaster heads.
sculpting like a third grade project
I know. Or
in
like,
their
honestly,
cell?
I'm just sitting here going, how did they get all that material? Like, I don't feel like plaster would be like the number one thing you have access to in a jail cell.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess. I,
And like the 50 raincoats to
yeah, like
make the
where did
life
they get 50
vest?
raincoats?
I don't know.
Wow.
But highly interesting.
Yeah.
Alcatraz is very interesting to begin with.
Yeah.
Um, like I mentioned Al Capone earlier. I don't know if you've heard of him before, but he's like one of the world's like most well-known mobsters.
Oh, okay.
And he was imprisoned there for the time being.
Gotcha.
It's not doesn't function as a prison now,
Anymore.
but
Right.
it's not too far from where San Quentin sits, the state penitentiary, which is actually a working prison. But yep,
So interesting, Sarah.
that kind of
As
concludes like our content section.
yeah,
I think we forgot to discuss a question, but I have one in mind.
I also as we're wrapping up, we didn't talk about
Oh
what books
yeah,
or movies or anything we've been taking
right.
part in. I read another Nancy Drew book this week.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, it was yeah, fun. Movies. Haven't been watching really anything new, so yeah, life's been a little boring, I guess. Oh, my brother and I, when we were in Branson, we watched the Hardy Boys, the like older
Nice.
70s show.
Those are the ones you watch when it snows outside.
Yeah, with
But it
Sean
wasn't
Cassidy in
summer.
it. Yeah, we
Yes,
watch them in
those
the
are
summer too because they have a summer vibe
right.
about them.
They do, yeah.
So, yeah,
Those are so good.
they are. I
They're
love
like
them.
classics.
What about you, Sarah?
Reading for books. I'm reading a book right now called well, I haven't done much reading lately since mainly I've
You've been writing a book.
focused on writing. But I am reading in the middle of a book called The Thursday Murder Club. I might have mentioned it earlier on the podcast in another episode. It's been pretty good. In terms of like movies, TV shows, I honestly haven't been watching much lately. Same because of focusing on writing.
Right.
And I've just been busy with like overtime at work and whatnot.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. But I was thinking for a question we could do, which you kind of mentioned already. I feel like this would be your answer. But what's something fun that you've done lately?
Oh, yeah, it would be going to Branson with my brother. That was
That's
fun.
You were there for like a whole week too.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Thanks to sponsorship by my grandparents and parents.
Sponsored by
Exactly.
Parents. Yeah.
So
nice.
Shout out to them. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
That's cool.
What about you?
My parents were in town for a week. So that was a lot of fun. We went to the Liberty football game.
So fun. I miss
a couple
going to
Saturdays ago. Yeah. And that was a lot of fun. We won, so that was good because the last two games my parents came to, we lost tragically to those games. And the soccer game, which was a lot of fun too.
Nice.
It was like raining on us, which was not fun because we were cold.
Yeah.
But it was still a lot of fun. We won that game too.
Yay.
And then we also went to Charlotte to the Billy Graham library.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I was like trying not to cry the whole time. It was so good.
It's so cool. Yeah. I wish
So
we could, because Taylor and I went
mhm.
about a month ago. And I wish we could have stayed. Did you guys do the tour? Because I really wanted to stay for the tour, but we didn't have time. Or did you just like do the wander around? Because that's what we did. But
I thought it was a tour. Maybe it wasn't a tour?
well, it probably did you watch like the video thing?
Yeah. And then we
Yes.
went
Okay.
into the room and there was another video with him sitting like I don't want to like spoiler alert for the Billy Graham library. And then you kind of go through like to like the canopy tent. They made it look like it was his first
Okay.
in Los Angeles,
Oh,
his first
cool.
revival. Oh, so you didn't do that?
No, we didn't do that because we had like 20 minutes before he dropped me off at the airport, and I was like,
Oh.
Taylor, we are going to this place. So like went down and looked at their graves, and then we went and looked at their house, and
Okay,
then
you did
we
that.
walked around the bookstore.
Oh.
But like
But you didn't.
we didn't have time to like actually sit and do any of that stuff.
Terryn. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. That was it was so good.
Okay. I'll have to go back and do that
You
sometime.
have to go back and do that because it goes through like his life almost, and even Ruth's life.
Oh, that's so cool.
And they like recreated her living room or their living room.
So neat.
And then like the interviews he's done, and they had like other worlds, like international evangelists talking about him in
Oh,
a
so
video
cool.
format. Um, it was really good, and it was like very, very Jesus centered. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't like Billy Graham the whole time.
Right.
I mean, it was because it's about him,
Right.
but it was about his how his life pointed to Jesus
Right.
and
Exactly.
Jesus through him. So that was really, really impactful. Um, but yeah, and then we went to the bookstore, and then we even ate at the little cafe.
Yeah, I want to do that too, and
Really good.
we didn't really.
Yeah,
The it's so crazy because I was so excited to go even
yeah.
for a little bit, and I
Oh,
was just
totally.
like, this place is so cool. And like the feeling you get as you're like walking up, it's just like
Mhm.
this like
Like holy ground.
yeah, I was like I'm
Yeah.
it's kind of like if I felt like this must be how they felt approaching the tabernacle back in the
Oh
day.
my
Not
gosh.
actually.
Honestly, no, seriously,
I
it
felt
felt
like
like that.
spiritual like and just as I am is like tinkling through
Yes.
like the speakers.
The song.
Yes. Oh yeah, yeah. Which was his like icon
Yeah.
kind of for
No, it
music, but yeah.
totally did.
It's so
My
cool.
mom even mentioned that as we were walking up. She was like, "Oh, it feels kind of like emotional to like
Yeah.
walk up."
Yeah.
But it was really good. I didn't realize you didn't do the full thing.
No, unfortunately. I'm gonna have to go back and
That's
do it.
too bad. Yeah.
Yeah. I was
It was really good. People have been like, I told them what we did, and they were like, "Oh, that's random. Like why go to Charlotte for that?" And I'm like, this is Billy Graham. Like,
yeah.
what
What are you talking about?
are you talking about? Are you a Christian? Like, do you know? No, I'm kidding. Um, but it was just really like powerful,
Yeah.
the whole thing. I got a
Yeah.
couple books by him too,
Nice.
devotionals by him and his wife.
Love that. I
Um,
loved her too.
yes. Well,
What
the room that was dedicated to her was they had like a video of her playing in the background because it talked about how she wanted to go back to China to like be a missionary there since
right.
that's where she was born and everything.
Right.
And she said something in the video along the lines of, um, like when I met Billy and saw that what his calling was, I knew that the only thing God was calling me to do was to step alongside him in that. And
Wow.
then it talked about how her role as a mother and a wife you don't see because all you see is like the Billy Graham,
Right.
like his like evangelism and his revivals and things like that.
Right.
But think about all 5 kids of theirs are
Yeah.
strong Christians living out
Right.
their faith, living out Jesus, and
And a lot of that's probably due to her.
a lot of Billy Graham in that
Holding.
video said that's all due to Ruth,
Yeah.
and because
Yep.
she was the one with them home with them the whole time.
Right.
So it just kind of like touched me in a way because
Yeah.
I feel like this nowadays in this day and age, the role of like wifehood and motherhood is like
Yeah.
looked down upon so much,
Right.
and
It's one of the
and
most powerful things
and
you
it's
can do.
literally like the most important
Yeah.
most important job. I have a coworker who he's young, and him and his wife, they just had their second baby, and I was asking like, how's your wife doing and stuff, and he's like, she's great, but she's got a harder job than I do. Like I can leave the house, but she's
Yeah.
at home with kids all day, and so it's
Right.
just kind of like touching to see like that side of it too,
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
and just how Ruth Graham's life was lived out through her children, and now even to this day
Right.
because of her walk with the Lord.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that was really cool.
A free promo for the
Yes,
Billy Graham
this
Library.
podcast is not sponsored by Billy Graham Library. We just love it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I think that about wraps it up for
That
today.
does. Yeah. This was good.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing the fall fun fact. That was fun.
Thanks for sharing the mystery corner.
Ooh,
It was
you're
so
welcome.
good.
Yes.
Well, until next time.
Stay cozy.